It's always gonna alienate the majority audience to turn this scenario into a both sides are kind of bad situation or perspective.
Exactly, and you don't want that. We don't want people to sympathize that much with the villain. And I think that Kablam is an excellent example, which was also this writer of like missing the mark again.
Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Podcast. We're sending live to you from the Impossible Planet. We're on the space base, managing our station that is perpetually falling into the black hole. My name is Wendela.
And my name is Clara.
Today we're going to talk about our reactions to the episode Lucky Day.
The latest episode of the season. We have a lot of opinions. We have a lot to talk about.
We might have some new segments today, some crackpot theories.
So how about Wendela, how about you do a recap of the episode, and I'm gonna give you, how much do you think you need, 2 minutes?
Yes, this time's challenge is gonna be articulation, because I noticed that my last time around it was not articulated.
So are you ready for recapping the episode?
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
We start this episode with a new character called Conrad, who meets the Doctor and Belinda as a child in 2007. We quickly fast forward to 2024, where Conrad runs into the Doctor and Ruby on the hunt for a monster called the Shriek, who marks Conrad as its prey before disappearing. We move on to 2025, where Ruby has left the TARDIS. Obsessed with the Doctor, Conrad finds Ruby through crowd searching and invites her to his podcast. Following the podcast, Conrad and Ruby begins dating, and barely a week later, Ruby visits Conrad's hometown and his friends. However, during this weekend, Ruby notices unusual activities and contacts Kate Lethbridge-Stewart at UNIT, who assures her that there's nothing to worry about. Ruby confides in Conrad about her PTSD stemming from her adventures with the Doctor. Yet the situation escalates when the Shriek appears again, hunting Conrad. Conrad admits that he never took the antidote that Ruby provided to him during a previous date. UNIT is dispatched, but it's revealed that the Shriek sightings were fabricated by Conrad as a part of a scheme to discredit UNIT and propagate conspiracy theories. Conrad publishes sensitive information about UNIT personnel, leading to public unrest and protests outside of UNIT headquarters. Conrad infiltrates UNIT's command center, live streaming his actions and denouncing UNIT's legacy. Kate releases the real Shriek, which hunts Conrad. During the ensuing chaos, Conrad confesses to his live stream to have fabricated the entire scenario. Ruby intervenes, stunning the Shriek, and Conrad is arrested. Ruby is left to process everything on her own, and we round the episode out with the Doctor visiting Conrad in prison. This encounter seems to have happened between Ruby and Belinda's times in the TARDIS, as Conrad mentions Belinda and the Doctor doesn't know who this is. The Doctor counters, warning Conrad that he will die in prison forgotten by history. However, the prison governor, Mrs. Flood in disguise, unexpectedly releases Conrad, ominously stating that it's his lucky day, suggesting possible future plotlines with these characters. And this episode is mostly without the Doctor's presence. So how did I do?
The timer kind of messed up. It just didn't. No, yeah, you totally made it the deadline. You totally made the deadline.
Thank you.
It was perfect. Should we talk about first impressions and opinions, maybe?
I think so.
My first opinion on this episode, unfortunately, wasn't very positive. I was left with kind of a bad feeling. The writer of this episode, Pete McTighe, also wrote Kablam and Praxeus, 2 episodes that I find very difficult. I'm sort of a Kablam apologist and Wendela's sort of a Praxeus apologist. Now, this writer has obviously been in the mix since the Jodie Whittaker era, and he's kind of indicative of some of the most common critiques often directed to that era, which is usually its political messages and its failure at communicating clearly its politics. We're definitely going to get deeper into that later, but I'll just say my first impression was negative. Now, on my first rewatch, I think I had a much better time because I was able to sit with the parts at the beginning and in the middle of the episode rather than just ruminating on the ending, which really just kind of upset me. So yeah, first impression, didn't like it. Second impression, okay, there's some salvageable parts in this episode, and hopefully we're going to be able to discuss both our pros and cons as we go along.
So right off the gates, I was so excited to have Ruby back. It immediately sold me. I really like this episode for being a compliment to building the world, and my honest first reaction was like, was this episode meant for us. I was really excited. I like the feel of this episode. I don't mind that it's Dr. Light. I like the pacing of the episode, and it's like immediately kind of ominous as we know something's gonna happen, but we don't really know what is about to happen. It feels pretty Doctor Who. It feels a bit like how Love and Monsters is actually the underappreciated underdog of that season for building Jackie's character.
Totally.
How that complements the world building. One question I want to throw to you is, 'cause obviously we don't have to have the same opinion. I feel like they heard us when you were talking about how in Russell T Davies' original run, he built this mythos of the Doctor having been seen around Earth and things like that. What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was our second ever episode about luck. And one of the things I really like about Russell T Davies' first run is how they established the myth of the Doctor's character. And he has a presence on the internet, he has a presence on TV, he exists in the social consciousness of the world. And I'm a big fan of that kind of mythologizing. I think Stephen Moffat often did in his era this like erase the memories of everyone and resetting the universe just to kind of like have things make sense. But Russell T Davies is brave enough to try and actually put the Doctor and unit into the context of like actual society. A society where there are going to be people who react to the stuff you do, who are going to have discourse about the stuff you do, have opinions and have political opinions. I think it's a very brave and ambitious approach to Doctor Who to be like, yeah, I'm actually gonna go through the trouble of setting this in the real world and having real people interact with this system of world-saving superheroes, essentially. Now, I think watching old Doctor Who and having those rose-tinted glasses and having that nostalgic distance from the time period makes it easier to watch those episodes that are kind of like political, that have real political figures, that like, I mean, Harriet Jones, for example. Watching it now, like in modern day, it becomes a little bit hokey and a little bit like, okay, we get it. People have phones. People have conspiracies. I get it. Like, it's a little bit more grating, a little bit more annoying, just because how many times have we not seen in a modern TV show like that, you know, that grid of like 10 different TikTokers discussing? It's like, it's very overplayed at this point, and it also feels dated.
And then the spamming hearts from the corner.
Exactly. Remember the episode with Clara where they all get disappeared into a computer? I think it's called The Bells of St. John. That one also had that like the split screen people doing YouTube videos, and it's like, guys, we did that how many years ago?
Idiot's Lantern does that too.
Yeah, it does. So I'm a bit, I don't know what I feel about it. I know that I literally said that I wanted this. And there are aspects of it that I really appreciate. I'm sure we're going to be discussing Love and Monsters more in depth and what we like about that episode, as in comparison to this episode. I just think some of it falls a bit flat. It feels a bit dated, and I don't think there's enough nostalgic distance to the politics of it for it to be like fun. I think whenever you bring in current day events, it can run the risk of being really grating for the viewer and being like not enough escapism, if that makes sense.
In our last podcast episode, I mentioned that I was cautiously excited for this episode, and I feel like my expectations weren't let down because I have this newfound appreciation for Unit. Like, I was kind of on the Unit hate train, but like now with Kate's mysterious hunk dude and
oh my god, the romance between them,
world building happening.
So excited.
Like, what was going on? I loved it. I feel like, yeah, the live streaming aspects and things like that it's a bit hard for me too, but all in all, I really like it for the character perspectives. This is bringing in with Ruby going on this podcast. Like, it feels already like there's red flags with this guy kind of crowd searching for her, finding her, bringing her onto the podcast.
And immediately hitting on her.
Exactly. And it feels like he's using this big event from her life, and she's very vulnerable to it, and he immediately uses that. I like how that type of narrative is used to sell their relationship, because it's totally believable. Like, obviously she wouldn't be able to be in a relationship with anyone else who didn't kind of have this fascination with the Doctor, but then it's obvious to everyone watching that this is not not great. This is like an immediate red flag, but I don't blame Ruby for it. I blame him for it, and then as we progress, I feel so much for her character. When we follow Ruby's story, I feel like it's so heartbreaking for her, like what chronologically, because we see the red flags early on, but then the traumatic experience of this relationship is so weighty. To start off, this boyfriend she has is obviously taking advantage of her emotional state, and then we see her having this PTSD act up, and Kate kind of invalidates it a little bit for her. It's not Kate's fault, like she has all the cards to do so, but it doesn't really help Ruby in this instance. And then when she goes out to hunt the Sheik, her boyfriend like disrespects her wishes of like stay back inside. No, I'm gonna be brave like the doctor. Like I felt like that was such a disgusting moment.
And you know what? Just like the fact that she doesn't immediately yell at him and tell him to get the fuck away, is baffling to me, because he's the one who's marked. He's the one who's attracting this monster and effectively attracting it to her. Well, obviously we find out that it's not a real monster, but shouldn't she have been a little bit more like, you bumbling idiot, please get away from me, you know?
I feel like it's a sign that this is not level playing field for them. And then when she finds out that he's using her, and like he brings up, oh, I had to deal with you, like your lip gloss and you're playing piano, and it's like her whole character, like it's so insulting. And then to know that he was never even remotely interested in her, he was only there to use her. It was obvious before that he was emotionally manipulating her, but on this scale, and just saying it blatantly to her face, like insulting her very character, is so disgusting. And I feel like at that point it would have been totally realistic for Ruby to just shut off from society completely and not even go to unit, but she does anyways. And then she ends up in this situation where a monster again, like perpetuating her PTSD, and then having this toxic person in her life in the same room. There's so many events in this that are heavy, and they really showed us how, yes, there is PTSD from traveling with the doctor, but also there's more traumatic events even back on Earth.
And I think that's an excellent point you make, that like the benefits of having a domestic episode, an episode set on Earth with like an old companion, is exploring this, like what happens when a companion leaves the TARDIS and what is waiting for them. Not only is it boredom and being obsessed with the doctor, it's also actual real life PTSD, and also the way you're taken advantage of by other people who are aware of the doctor. And I think that's always a welcome exploration. I love it when Doctor Who does that kind of stuff, when it gives more respect and weight to the characters and their emotional journeys even after they've left the TARDIS. I think that's great, and I think that's one of the reasons why Love and Monsters is sort of a sleeper hit for me. Like obviously on the face of it, one of the most goofy and least respected episodes of the new run.
Justice for Love and Monsters.
Justice for Love and Monsters. But when you rewatch it, especially in the context of the entire season, it actually becomes a little bit like good, mostly because of how grounded it is and how
I love rewatching it. Always a banger.
I do too, and it's about that betrayal that Jackie has of like somebody really needling their way into their life and then finding out that, oh my god, you only wanted me for the excitement of the doctor, you only wanted me for this or for that. I think that's a good story beat, and I think that Pete McThigh decided to basically rip that off from Love and Monsters directly and then add his own twist to it. So I will say though, I picked up on all the same character moments that you mentioned. I do have a problem with how they approach the pacing of the episode. I think way too much time is spent on these suspense scenes. Like mainly I'm talking about the scene at the abandoned shopping mall with the Shriek, where they spend a lot of time like with him walking around being scared, and also the ending fight scene. They put a lot of time just in unit, in suspense, them walking around slowly. Like I think they put too much time on those scenes on the episode and not enough time exploring the characters. I think that the character work is a little bit told, not shown. own, like with Ruby mentioning that she has PTSD. We don't see her in any other scene having any PTSD. The only time they mention the fact that she's obsessed with the Doctor is when her adoptive mom says, oh, she hasn't mentioned the Doctor in weeks, and we kind of get an indication. I think I just needed her character journey to be sold a little bit more, rather than having these kind of boring sequences of, oh, the Shriek is so scary, because like, I don't know, it's not the scariest, coolest Doctor Who alien we've ever had. Like, that's just my opinion, right? I wish we would have spent more time on the characters, less time on those shots and those scenes. I also want to say on characters, first of all, why is nobody critical of the boyfriend? Like, why is nobody sitting Ruby down and going like, something is weird about this dynamic? Like, obviously it's good that you're doing something that isn't related to missing the Doctor, but you're also just dating someone who's obsessed with the Doctor, and that obviously opens you up for manipulation and opens you up for uncritically taking somebody in.
Her family is weirdly encouraging about this.
Why doesn't UNIT do a background check on the guy? I find it hard to believe that with the political landscape as it is in the show being set up as like a lot of people are critical of UNIT, I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't have security measures in place to make sure that no trolls or political activists get close to vulnerable people who are related to the work that UNIT does. I feel like they would have had higher security and be more cynical.
Maybe Kate was distracted by her hunk dude.
Well, I think that's the implication, right?
Yeah.
That, like, the people at UNIT are actually kind of incompetent. And I think that, unfortunately, that kind of, it comes across, UNIT comes across as naive in this episode, because I feel like we know what the world is like these days. We know about doxing, we know about internet trolls, we know about dedicated haters. I mean, for crying out loud, Doctor Who as a show has a dedicated hater fan base online right now, and I don't think anybody benefits from underestimating people like that, and I think they should have done Ruby better by doing at least a background check of this guy, you know?
You're totally right.
I also wanted to talk about the concept of a twist villain and the concept of a twist in general in these episodes, in these types of episodes, and what we think about the sympatheticness of the villain, because in Love and Monsters, the twist isn't really a twist. We're kind of all in on it. The fact that this guy is essentially manipulating Jackie to get close to her so that he can get close to Rose and the Doctor. In this episode, we know that the character has met the Doctor before, and we know that the character is obsessive, and we, especially as female viewers, kind of get a tingly sense that something isn't wrong. And I think everybody also assumes that there's going to be a twist.
I feel like maybe that is why I bought her PTSD, her blindness to it all. Like, that's how I interpreted her lack of caution. Well, her implied scrambled mindset of, is this a good situation?
Exactly. Well, and that's why we need people in her life to be there for her and to be her compass, her thermostat, to be able to check out the situation and be like, maybe there's some red flags here. Well, so I predicted live that he had not taken the antidote to attract the monster because I thought that he wanted the Doctor to come and save the day. My boyfriend, who was watching it with me, went a step further and predicted that he was faking it all and that the people, that the Shriek was actually in masks, and that it was going to be a plot twist where he had faked everything and his friends were in on it.
I have a third perspective. I thought that he plainly didn't believe the Doctor is real, and I didn't expect it to be a type of trying to expose a unit or calling a bluff, but more just to manipulate. I thought that was going to be the resolution of that.
So a possible angle they could have gone with is this, like, is the Doctor actually real? Did I actually see what I saw when I was a kid, right? Like, curiosity. But what they do go with is this like trolling, like, the government is lying to you kind of perspective, which I think it's fine, it's valid, it's like, it's very, that's how politics are these days. It's very QAnon, it's very that vibe. It's very deep state of America, nothing is real. And so, like, I don't mind that direction, and I think that one of the strongest points of the episodes is just as you mentioned, when he completely goes in on Ruby and makes her feel like shit. I mean, obviously we don't like our characters being being hurt in that way, but I think it was effective. However, they go in the direction of actually having the main villain know that the Doctor is real and that the aliens are real, but lying about it actively because he's malicious. At least that's how I interpreted it. Because we know that he actually saw the TARDIS, we know that he actually saw the aliens, we know that he's actually seen the TARDIS materialize as an adult, but he decides to be campaigning this conspiracy theory anyways, because he feels betrayed by the Doctor, because he abandoned him when he was a child, essentially just to be abused by his mother and told that he was just a bag of lies, right?
He seems to totally abandon reason in favor of his emotions.
Exactly. This is why I have an issue with this episode. That is way too sympathetic. They make the character too sympathetic. I mean, imagine you are, how old is he? Like maybe 7. You're 7 years old. You see this fantastical thing. You see this wonderful man land in a blue box, and he gives you a coin, says it's his lucky day, and then he just leaves you to be hit in the face by your mother. You know what I mean? Like you are completely abandoned and constantly in the shadows. You never get invited into the TARDIS. You know that there are people out there who are traveling with the Doctor and who have this fantastic life, and you can't have that. And he turns extremely bitter, but also he kind of rallies people around this feeling of being lied to by the government, which is real, in a lot of people, sympathetic and not. Like, there can be people who are critical of the government because they believe in QAnon, and then there can be people who have, like, legitimate gripes with how the government is using our resources, right? And I think they make the character sympathetic, but then they also go in on him so hard at the end, both the Doctor and Kate being literally cruel to him in a way that is off-putting, without ever acknowledging the fact that he has been hurt as a child. And I don't mean that we need to absolve him of everything that he's done. I just mean that we can have a more complex narrative, right? It's this classic Doctor Who dilemma of, do we prefer when the Doctor puts someone in a mirror for all eternity, or do we prefer when the Doctor calls out Harriet Jones for bombing like a bunch of aliens because life is sacred?
I feel like it's an unfortunate consequence of having us not be in on his actual motives until really late on in the episode, that we're not shown his radicalization, or we're not shown his diverting his emotions about his childhood trauma into this cause of conspiracy. We're not shown any of how that came about. It really compromises our ability to criticize him throughout that journey. So we get this moment of Unit just really ripping him apart in a few minutes.
I also think the episode puts us in the shoes of Ruby and Unit, and it urges us to sympathize with them, and it puts like this other sympathetic character as the main antagonist. And to me, it kind of has the subtext of like, this character is a stand-in for people who are critical of the show, who are critical of Doctor Who, and the main characters of Unit and Ruby are the stand-in of us, the viewers. However, it does the mistake of having us, the viewers, be incredibly vindictive and angry, and going to the point of like physically harming someone and scaring them to death by releasing this like scary creature on them, and then also doing a monologue about how like having our main character, the guy who's supposed to be like our knight in shining armor, our empathetic, godlike North Star, having him go in on this one person and being like, you are gonna die alone in a prison cell and you don't deserve to see the light of day. It's like, why are you making the main character so cruel? It's not fun to be asked to see the episode through the perspective of people who are being cruel. And besides having somebody tell Kate that you're gonna get a call from Geneva, there is very little criticism of her in the episode and her choice to basically torture this person, right?
And I think if we turn the metaphor around to see the episode as a reflection of real-life politics, we get this scenario where Doctor Who is kind of supposed to symbolize science and reason and like the informed perspective, as opposed to the increasingly fascist American right wing. Like, maybe this was written way before that moment, but looking at it from where we stand today, like, that is the comparison we get. And I feel like it's a little bit too charitable for Doctor Who to be the science knight in shining armor. I don't think there's a lot of people who watch Doctor Who feel like, yes, we're the people who stand up for what is actually true in society and listen to what science tells us and read through history. Like, it's not a very sympathetic angle for the metaphor.
If you want Unit and Ruby to be the innocent victims of the episode, then don't make them the villains at the end. I think that's my point, right? It kind of goes back to my opinions of Kablam. I think this could be an apt point to put. So in this episode, we have the two sides, right? We have Unit, and then we have the conspiracy theorists. And we also have that news broadcaster, that famous lady who was also in the original Russell T Davies era, who says that Unit are fascists, right? And it's this appeal to this intense word, and it's also a question put in the air of who are the real fascists, right? Because the conspiracy theorists have this narrative that Unit are the people who are abusing resources, who are lying to the public, and who are sucking out money from the little man, right? Using tax money for bullshit, essentially. Which is a valid critique that a lot of leftists have about the government today, but not with this conspiracy theorist angle in mind, right? And then we also have the establishment and the government calling the conspiracy theorists fascists because their opinions are typically regressive, and they often have that like right-wing undertone in their politics. The issue at hand is that the episode problematizes both sides in a way that doesn't land coherently. I think the politics are a bit too muddy, and if you're going to problematize the good guys, if you're going to problematize Unit, you need to be very precise in how you do that. You can't just show people at Unit be obscenely cruel to a person, regardless of how evil that person is, and then not have like a cool down discussion afterwards about that and be like, yo, that was wrong, and not have the Doctor kind of talk to Kate and be like, never do that again, never do that in my name again.
It's always gonna alienate the majority audience to turn this scenario into a both sides are kind of bad situation or perspective.
Exactly, and you don't want that. We don't want people to sympathize that much with the villain. And I think that Kablam is an excellent example, which was also this writer of like missing the mark again. In Kablam, the main villain is super critical of the political landscape and has a really good freaking point. He just chooses the wrong method. He chooses terrorism as a method, right? And we can be critical of that all we want. Like, obviously, that person is not sympathetic in the method they choose, but the essence of their philosophy is sympathetic. And the problem is that if you have your sympathetic, morally superior character kill that person in the end heartlessly, you come out of that episode going like, wait a minute, so who was the good guy? And I don't mean that we can't have a nuanced conversation about the fact that sympathetic characters sometimes make mistakes, sometimes go too far, sometimes in the name of protecting your father, protecting the brigadier, protecting your establishment, people can go too far and be too mean. Like, that's fine, but then at least bake that into the plot instead of assuming that the audience is going to pick the right side. Because if you leave it up to the audience, you're going to have a lot of people who actually are on the right wing and who actually are conspiracy theorists who are going to identify way more with the villain. My boyfriend told me when we were watching that he thought the best part of the episode was the villain because he was so well acted, so well performed, and he was compelling in his own way. And I don't mean that we can't have sympathetic villains, I just mean that we have to still come out of the episode sympathizing with the characters we're meant to sympathize with.
Yeah, it sets a bad precedent for the metaphor as well.
Exactly.
When we do that. Because I also really think that the strength of this episode is the characters and the character developments. Even though it, as a narrative, puts a very weird perspective politically on these two sides, making them, they're both kind of bad in their own way, but it's fine. Like, I feel like that's the takeaway commentary, which I'm not happy with.
They could have easily saved it by, number one, having Ruby interject more strongly than just saying, no, Kate, stop it, save him. Like, having Ruby, like, actually forcibly stopping Kate somehow. That could have saved it. They also could have saved it by having the Doctor acknowledge some sympatheticness or like acknowledge anything in the main antagonist that is positive, and like try to be a little bit warm. I understand it's hard to do that when he's so thoroughly disrespected your best friend, but he's the Doctor. He's meant to be holier than thou and to, you know, have this fire in him and be angry, but at the same time sympathize with humans, right? I think they could have saved it by just adding one line in the monologue being like, listen, I'm sorry your mom abused you. That sucks. I'm sorry you were told that you were a liar your whole childhood. That sucks. But we are what we choose to do with our trauma, right? Because at the end of the day, both Ruby and this man have PTSD, and they choose to act very differently with that PTSD, right? But one person chose to do something good with it, and one person chose to be malicious. And you see what I mean?
Yeah,
right?
I feel like the introspection on that point is very lacking.
Exactly. And having a few lines could really save the script for me. Like focusing more on the characters, focusing more on the PTSD, and having the characters acknowledge at the end that trauma shapes us differently, but it's about the choices we make. I think that could have been a much more comfy message to be left with.
The episode develops them very separately, which is not in favor of creating a compelling story.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to bring up, because now we've mentioned Conrad's mother a few times, and because we don't really develop his past in any way, do we think that his mother is a mystery box maybe? Because they don't really tell us what's the deal with her. Like he immediately tells her that I found a blue box and a doctor and a Belinda Chandra. So why would he have that immediate thought to tell his mother about that? Is that significant to the two of them? And then like it's implied that they don't have a great relationship, and that he is paying for her expenses to live abroad and then lie about her passing. And we don't really, I feel like I don't really know what to do with that information, so I'm like, is this a mystery box? Is it not? I don't know.
Well, it seems that this character will be returning just because Mrs. Flood ends up releasing him from prison at the end, and also interrupting the timeline because the Doctor seems convinced that he's going to die in there. So
Right.
We might get some recurring villain vibes from this guy, and I wouldn't mind that because I actually think Conrad is well acted and interesting, and it's fun to have like a conspiracy theorist fascist villain in Doctor Who. Like I know I've been very critical in this episode, but I don't mind that at all. I mean, I think we all know someone in our lives who have been, you know, seduced by this type of online troll political garbage, and it's fun to have a villain like that in a show you like. So I wouldn't mind if they bring him back, and I hope that if they do, they develop his relationship with his mother a little bit more in regards to how it affected him and how it led him down this path, because I think both you and I are in agreement that that's what's actually lacking from this episode.
Did you feel like his character was a bit like the series 1 episode Dalek, where the characters running this extraterrestrial collection of things and totally missing the mark of how dangerous the Dalek is, being bad faith towards the Doctor and his authority? Because I got real like Adam Mitchell vibes, Satellite 9. This guy is too blonde for his own good.
Yeah. No, well, I think what we're meant to think about this character is that he's kind of the typical white guy, I know what's going on here, I'm gonna charge in and decide what's right. and decide what's dangerous and what's not vibes from Conrad. And I think what we're meant to think is kind of just like you say, that this person severely underestimates what the Doctor and unit accomplish for him and for the world. And I think that's kind of meant to be the meta message that you're meant to take away, right? That like you should trust authorities even when they're women, even when they're a black man. Like that's kind of like the undertone of the episode, I feel like. I think the problem is that I saw a review on Letterboxd about this episode that said something along the lines of nonsense propaganda, and kind of had the same critique that I had about Kate Lethbridge Stewart at the end, and of the Doctor going in so hard on this person, being like, you are going to alienate people who disagree with the politics of the show, but also it makes the people you're meant to sympathize with kind of evil, or it makes them look bad, right? And propaganda is a good word to use, because I think like I'm a very leftist person, but that also inherently means that I'm going to be distrustful of people who are allowed to spy on people, who are allowed to have all this information about people, and who are allowed to carry weapons and arrest people for no reason. Stuff like that is like valid to be concerned about. And I think that he should be critical of how Kate acted at the end of that episode, because at the end of the day, no matter how brutal someone is to you, no matter how much you betray Ruby Sunday, no matter how much you complain about her lip gloss, it isn't okay to like essentially torture someone. It just isn't. No matter how horrible that person is, like that's just a fact.
Okay, so as promised, I'm introducing a new segment. Okay, also, I want to know if this is similar to what has been circling online, because I don't think I'm as tapped into the online theories of the last season of Doctor Who. Maybe this is similar to other things.
I'll let you know.
We were talking a lot about how the character developments are a lot better this season, and like how the character developments are the shining points of this RTD run. And I feel like the more I watch it and the more I rewatch it, the more I feel like this run is way underrated for what it actually presents. And there are some criminally overlooked episodes. I feel like the first time people watch episodes, there are some things that seem like mistakes, but the further we get into the story, I feel like they are not mistakes. Like when we were watching Lux especially, we pointed out many discrepancies in what does Lux actually bring for the Pantheon, why is no one noticing the TARDIS, and the further we get into this season 2, I feel like maybe these are actually mystery boxes left for us. And I feel like this season is creating in the background a sort of meta that I just recently noticed, and let me convince you about my theory here. So, a criticism I still have towards season 1 is that the overarching mysteries are still a bit too surface level for me to really feel engaged. Ruby season doesn't have one of those mystery box plots like having River's Song or The Impossible Girl or Bad Wolf be scattered across the universe or Silence Will Fall being planted everywhere and having the lines "You are not alone." Those things, it adds richness to the story, and you always have this reference point of what could be appearing at any moment that I should tie this together with, and you're trying to fit the pieces together, although we kind of know that they're never gonna fit together in a Rusty Davies puzzle. But it's fun, and you build up this artificial hype in you that makes you feel like the narrative is much grander than just Silence Will Fall. Like opening this season 2 with the Earth being gone is way more impactful, and it helps me to feel like this season is engaging. But now that I have that as a mystery box, I feel like there's more anticipation in store, and therefore I feel like I can watch it with a bit more excitement. Now that we're kind of unraveling the May 24th mystery box, the grander the story seems to be, and like all these smaller discrepancies, like more roots to it. Maybe there's more to it. And in the last episodes, we pointed out two very important things to me for this analysis. It was first that there is a lot of callbacks, and that is the first time I actually started noticing that there has been a lot more callbacks to the first Curiosity Davis run than ever really before, and they feel kind of important. And also we notice that the mystery of May 24th is a lot meatier than just the world being exploded or whatever. No, so I kept those things in mind. This is a story time.
Okay, I'm ready.
I was just watching some of Ruby's run because of this episode, Lucky Day, to relive some of Ruby as a companion. And I was kind of admiring how the beginning of Space Babies, when they step out of the TARDIS and step on a butterfly, like how that is matching up with the mechanics of 73 yards. And it really establishes some of the mechanics for the season.
So specifically like the alternate timeline mechanics.
Yeah, alternate timeline and like having a time loop that can resolve itself by mere whims, I feel. It's not very rigid. And then it kind of hit me that Ruby is a parallel to Rose, but not just in the way that I think is obvious. Like, it's Judy's first companion, she's blonde, she's an everyday palatable girl, she has this face following her around like Bad Wolf. She has this face following her around that is actually an omen of what is to be at the end of the season.
Yeah, and she's also very lost without the Doctor, it seems like.
Yeah, and I feel like we kind of ignore how similar she is to Rose by focusing on her similarity with the Doctor's newfound identity as an orphan, but she's also lacking a parent just like Rose was. So there's so many uncanny parallels that I have completely looked over. And then with this new season, having Belinda be a super strong parallel to Martha,
who's right here, by the way,
who we have discussed has so many parallels as well, and I think it's even more blatant than with Ruby. And then the whole last episode, noticing all these callbacks to just playing toxic in an episode discussing what happens after Earth is gone. Like, I feel like I've overlooked it all because it's a smart thing to reestablish this mythos that RTD has brought into the series with his first run, but then also have interest for long-time watching fans who can recognize the parallels and see how those parallels are played in a different way this time around. But I feel like maybe there's a bit more to those parallels than just being that.
Now that you're pointing it out, it seems a bit too much to just be like an Easter egg nod. It seems like maybe this is actually going to tie into the finale somehow.
So I have thoughts on that, exactly that.
Oh my god, that made me think of something too.
Okay, so this is the Crackpot theory.
You go first.
And yeah, when I was rewatching Ruby's run, I really felt like, so this is the thing I was talking about in the beginning, how we overlook these sloppy details, and if we look at them cynically, it feels like mistakes. But now in retrospective, it feels so intentional that I'm losing my mind about it.
Which details do you mean? You need to give some examples.
So when they just overlook the fact that Ruby is a total parallel to Rose, and whenever a companion does something that is so similar to a previous companion, recycling old beats. And then I thought maybe I didn't go far back enough, because when David Tennant becomes the 14th Doctor, he questions why this body. And if my analysis of this being a running thing is correct, and like everything is a big deja vu moment, then this also should be holding significance. Like, ever since Jodie left the show, the Doctor has been reliving old past experiences. And
you're right.
What happens in Why Blue Yonder? So now I'm gonna do another little tangent, and I'm gonna reference, shout out Dr. Who Fan 91, his analysis of the Midnight Entity. You should really watch that video. A short summary of it is that the Midnight Entity is this character that plays hide and seek and is really good with imitation, just like the villain we meet in Wild Blue Yonder. And that maybe they are the same because it can survive unlivable conditions and it exists far out in the universe. Like, the parallels are kind of strong, and that theory kind of informed this line of thinking. And that is also the first episode where we mentioned Mavity. It's an episode with a few mysteries. For example, they never tell us why we landed on this spaceship particularly, and maybe the Doctor landing there is in fact also connected to why David Tennant became the 14th Doctor, because they're so close in time. I feel like maybe this whole run, ever since the 14th Doctor's regeneration, by generation is still not totally making sense, just being this new mechanic. All of that might in itself just be a deja vu moment, or a dream, a god of dreams, or deception. And there's a lot of theories on who Mrs. Flood is, and I mean there's a lot of comparisons to Rain, Flood, like things like that. But I also thought of maybe it would be a continuation of another part Time Lord character, River's Song, because Flood, water, and what we know about River's Song is that we lose her to the computer that keeps the library running, the computer that backs people up and lets them relive their lives, or keep living their lives but backed up to a computer. So maybe that could be another solution to it. That's the real Crackpot theory to it. And like whatever it could be, I feel like we're reliving memories, and that is very intentional. I feel like that is what we're building up to, because now the parallels are just off the charts.
Well, I think it has been a popular theory, this like god of storytelling, right? And people assumed that Lux would sort of be that because he was the god of TV. He wasn't. He was the god of light, right? But we had some of that meta breaking, formula breaking, like making Doctor Who into characters IRL in the show. So the position of god of storytelling, god of TV, god of whatever is still kind of up for grabs.
That was one of the points I forgot to mention, how well it gels with that.
So I think it's a popular theory that's been going since the release of season 1, just because there are so many meta lines thrown into there, like the Doctor saying this is non-diegetic and stuff like that. And I think I really like what you've brought up, this reliving. Maybe it's not necessarily River's Song and the computer, even though I love that. It's a very apt like comparison. I think that could be really fun. But I think the theme could still stand, the idea could still stand, that the Doctor is reliving beats from his past, because isn't it in the Star Beast that the Doctor and Donna end a thread together, and the reason he regenerated into David Tennant was because some fate, like needed him to be there together with Donna. Like there was something like that in that episode, right? Justifying his regeneration. But then we also have this very central episode, Wild Beyonder, where literally everything in terms of the Pantheon, in terms of the toy maker, in terms of inviting Mystique into the show starts. That's where everything begins, right?
Oh, and if we invite this character that could be, so to bring in the Midnight Entity theory again, that it's a character that keeps on learning or adapting to new rules, and since this new run we get the Metacrisis Doctor back through Donna, and then shortly after we get By Generation. Like that could be kind of a rules are changing because we're in this bizarro universe all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, so what I like about this midnight theory is that I was kind of talking about in the last episode how I thought it would be interesting if it is revealed to us that the Midnight Entity, even further into the future, is actually a godlike character that we've met before. And I was kind of into maybe it's the toy maker, maybe it's Sutek, maybe something like that. But I like this idea as well about it being the mysterious entity in Wild Beyonder, and that would make a lot of sense, right? That the Midnight Entity actually gets out from the Midnight Planet and finds its way, like survives time essentially, to end up in this strange planet, right? And I think what needs to be justified in this theory is like how, but also why is the Midnight Entity in that case causing the Doctor to relive the same story beats that he's already relived, right? And so is that because it was secretly good all the time and it wants the Doctor to learn from its mistakes? Is it because he wants to trap the Doctor in a bizarre universe where nothing makes sense? Like, I don't know, because I think in general the worst kinds of plot twists are the kinds of plot twists where it was all a dream, right? I think it would be more interesting if it's like the type of justification that David Tennant has for regenerating into David Tennant, right? Where it's like, it's sort of mysterious and mystiquey, but it is actually in the real world. It's not a dream, right? So maybe there's some purpose to having him relive the same plot beats, but it is actually in real life. It's not just a dream, right? That's what I would hope, but I really like this line of thinking. I think it's super compelling and super interesting.
Oh, and it would also make sense with if there is a bizarre universe type situation, that having gods intervene with the timeline and history would be very possible. Like it would be so in the scope of pulling the strings in a fake universe or a dream or something like that. Of course, people could come in and direct the story however they want and have almighty characteristics.
Well, I think what I would like about such a resolution is that it would tie together with this like running theme. Like, for instance, Kate says in 73 Yards that things have been getting weirder recently. Things have been getting more magical and supernatural rather than just being aliens, right? So it would feel like it would tie together the two seasons really well as well.
Yeah, I feel like that is also another detail I feel like I've sort of overlooked, that the way Judy is playing the Doctor, he usually has these moments that feel pulled out of nowhere, where he is more cautious than usual. I feel I don't have any examples of it because I just feel like it's true. But if we look at it through a perspective of this is a universe the Doctor himself isn't used to, then it would make a lot of sense for Judy to be caught off guard randomly by just meta things. About the things they're living through. But that's basically the theory I had. What do we think? Do you think it's similar to what people were talking about in season 1?
Yeah, well, I actually haven't really, because I'm more tapped in than you are, but I'm not super tapped in, right, to the theories in the fandom. But I think a lot of people are theorizing about Mrs. Flood being some type of Time Lord, and a lot of people are theorizing about this like god of stories, maybe the gods of Ragnarok come back, stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's right up there with like common ideas about this era.
I have another conclusion that this leads me to, that is another side point from Doctor Who Fan 91. That it is such a missed opportunity to split this season 1 and season 2 into separate things, because watching them together, for me, through this experience, makes it all fit together so much better. I like season 1 a lot more by watching season 2, and I've felt that throughout this season.
Same.
So I feel like it's such a missed opportunity, and it would be much more obvious that we're replaying story beats if we had Ruby and Belinda back to back in the same season. So yeah, I think we briefly mentioned that in our last podcast episode as well, that part of what makes Ruby more compelling, at least to me, in season 2 than in season 1 is simply the absence of her and how the Doctor feels without her, but also how it makes us reflect on her character, right? Like, Rose is endearing, but she's also missed. Her absence is felt so potently throughout the rest of Russell T Davies' run that she becomes more beloved and more significant after her actual appearance on the show as a companion, right? And it's the same with Ruby, I feel. That they're both very endearing people, very eccentric and electric, but they also become mythologized and more beloved in retrospect. And I think that season 2 does that not only for Ruby as a character, but also for the entire season as a whole. Like, I can't really put my finger on why, but this season has made me appreciate season 1 more. I don't have a reason for that. It's just a feeling. I completely agree, and every single time we sit down to record an episode review, we have these new aspects of why this season makes so much sense with the last season, and just having this episode bring back Ruby, having that point out how much we miss Ruby and how much the loss of her presence is felt. It just helps you pinpoint the good things about the last season, I think. And every single episode we find a new quality that was good. So this theory has made me heavily consider to start a running list of every single parallel brought up since the 60th anniversary and see if that leads me somewhere. So if you have any of those thoughts, please leave them in the comment. Bring up any big or small parallel, because I want to know. I'm gonna start a list, compile it somehow, and see if it becomes something.
I love that. We can make like a public Google Doc that everybody can do.
For sure.
Well, I think to kind of sum up our thoughts, maybe this wasn't our favorite episode. There were lots of good parts, there were lots of bad parts.
I like the feel of this episode. I don't know who you're talking about here.
No, but I think for me, the highlight of the episode, in a similar vein to what the highlight of Love and Monsters is, it's that it's a good kind of glue episode. Like, it's kind of in betweeny, it's kind of domestic, and it's kind of like a tying things from season 1 and season 2 together episode, and those are necessary for a coherent show.
It's a very compelling filler episode to me.
Yeah, that's a good compelling filler. That's it. That's the tagline of this review, right? I think that the best part of this episode is how it makes me feel about the rest of the show, right? And theorizing about what could be coming, but also appreciating what was good in the past.
Yeah. So last week's recovery efforts of our space base on the Impossible Planet were successful, but there's still some patching up to do. So we're gonna have to go back to that.
Yes.
And we'll see you in the next episode of our Impossible podcast.
Yes, and before we end this episode, we would just like to thank you so much for I think 300 views on our latest episode, and also 21 subscribers. That's super exciting. And don't forget to leave a comment if you had any opinions on our opinions, if you had any of your own opinions on this episode that you would like to share. This is a positive and happy space where we have fun opinions on Doctor Who, and we don't just blindly hate on it. Yay.
It's been so mind-blowing. I love seeing people wanting to engage with positive Doctor Who content, and sometimes critical, of course. They were not just blindly loving the show, but just not hate watching, you know. It's so much fun.
Exactly. Just a general appreciation for the craft. Thank you so much for all the interactions.
Thank you 1,000 times over. It's been mind-blowing that
it's so
someone
motivating
out there cares about whatever we're just yapping about. So
that's so much fun. So thank you so much, and we will go back to repairing this place and having it in top condition. Hopefully the audio and the video has been good in this episode, and hopefully it was a pleasant watch, and we'll see you soon. Hopefully we won't have been completely propelled into the black hole by
now. Bye!
Bye!
So how did I do?
I must admit that the timer kind of messed up. It just didn't.
Well, just say it was 2 minutes.
Let's just pretend. No, yeah, you totally made it the deadline. You totally made the deadline.
Thank you. And if it wasn't, I'll just edit it down a little bit.
That's the magic of editing, isn't it?
Editing magic, saving the day.
Saving the day once again.